I signed her name in the wrong place. That's the cleanest way to say it, and it still doesn't feel honest enough. When people picture how someone ends up in the ground while they're still alive, they imagine a villain, a man with a shovel and a grin, or they imagine some freak accident with a collapsible hole and a scream that fades. That wasn't it. It was paper, pens, and a building that smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. It was 3 different people doing what they'd done hundreds of times. It was me wanting to get through a shift without another argument with the charge nurse. It was a woman lying still while her body played a trick it had played before. I didn't know that last part until later. Her name was Maren Lentz, 32, lives alone, no kids, 1 sister in Hamburg. She came in on a Tuesday with abdominal pain and a headache that made her vomit in the waiting room trash can. She wasn't dramatic about it. She apologized to the receptionist while she was still wiping her mouth. Her vitals were off, but not in a way that makes people sprint. Elevated heart rate, lowish blood pressure, not terrible. Pale, cold fingertips, the kind of patient you line up behind the guy with chest pain and the old woman with slurred speech. I first saw her at the end of my rotation in triage, when the waiting room had that sour mood that comes from being ignored. She was sitting with her forehead against the wall, eyes closed, hands pressed to her stomach. Her coat was still on. She looked like someone trying to become invisible. "Name?" I asked. She lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were open but not focused. "Maren," she said. "Maren Lentz." "Any allergies?" "No." "Medications?" She hesitated like she had to walk through a fog to find the words. "Nothing regular." "Pregnant?" "No." "Pain scale?" She opened her mouth and for a second her face changed. Not because the pain spiked, because she got confused. Her eyes moved over my shoulder as if she was reading something behind me. 7, she said too carefully. We got her to a bed. Blood draw, fluids, antiemetic. The doctor on duty, Dr. Klein, did a quick abdominal exam and ordered an ultrasound. There was no obvious surgical belly, no guarding, no rebound. She flinched when he pressed under her ribs. "Liver?" he said, more to himself. The ultrasound tech was backed up. Labs came back bland. White count not high. Liver enzymes a bit elevated but not screaming. She had a mild fever. Dr. Klein thought viral, maybe gallbladder irritation without stones. He wrote for observation and pain control. Admit to internal medicine. A bed upstairs. At some point she stopped answering questions. It didn't happen like a switch. It was gradual. Her speech got slower. Her eyelids drooped. She'd answer a question, and then stare at the ceiling. Her hand would drift off her stomach and hang off the side of the bed, like she forgot it belonged to her. I remember thinking, she's exhausted. She hasn't slept. She's in pain. She's getting meds. This is normal. But then her breathing changed. It got shallow, like she was taking tiny sips of air. Her chest moved, but barely. It's the kind of thing you notice out of the corner of your eye and then you go back and check because it doesn't sit right. Her pulse on the monitor slowed down. 55, then 50. Her oxygen sat in the low 90s. She was still pink. Her lips weren't blue. Her skin wasn't clammy. She just looked too quiet. We did what we do. We called respiratory. We shook her shoulder. We did a sternal rub. Nothing. Her eyes were closed. The monitor beeped like a metronome. Dr. Klein came back, annoyed, like we'd pulled him away from something more important. He checked her pupils. He listened to her chest. He asked what she'd gotten. Just the antiemetic, I said. And fluids. No opioids. He frowned. He pushed on her nail bed and watched the color return. She's not cyanotic, he said. He told us to get an EKG. It was normal. He ordered a CT head because of the headache. The scanner was free. They wheeled her down. I didn't go. My shift was almost over. Another nurse took her. An hour later, she came back. The CT was clean. No bleed. No mass. The radiologist wrote, unremarkable. Dr. Klein wrote, possible syncope, atypical presentation, continue observation. She didn't wake up. At midnight, the bed upstairs was still not ready, so she stayed in the emergency department. That's not rare. People sleep in the hallway. People die in the hallway. It's not supposed to be like that, but it is. By 2 a.m, her temperature had dropped. Not drastically. Just enough that the nurse on the night shift, Tanya, put another blanket on her and noted it. By 4, her oxygen was 88 and drifting. Respiratory put on a nasal cannula. Her SAT came up. At 6, I came back for another shift. I saw her in bed 6, still there, still quiet. Her skin had a gray tint, like someone had washed her in cold water and forgot to dry her. Her lips were pale. Her eyelids were half open now, and I could see the whites of her eyes. They looked dull. Tanya looked tired. She's been like this all night, she said. No response. Any urine? Barely. Doctor seen her? Klein checked at 5. Said she's stable. Stable. The word that means not actively dying in front of us. At 7, her heart rate dropped into the 40s. At 8, her blood pressure wasn't reading on the automatic cuff. We took it manually. It was low, not catastrophic, but low enough that you'd usually care. At 8:30, her breathing became so shallow that the monitor started alarming for apnea because it couldn't detect it. We turned off the alarm and watched her. That's the part I keep replaying, not the later things, not the earth, not the wood. This, a few people in scrubs, looking at a woman who was still warm and choosing not to treat the situation like a fire. Dr. Klein came. He looked at the monitor. He listened again. He checked her pulse at the neck. She's got a pulse, he said. He said it like that was the end of the story. Then he stepped back. He looked at her face. You said she came in with pain, he said. Yes. Any talk screen? No. He ordered it. He ordered an arterial blood gas. It came back odd, but not lethal. Her pH was slightly off. CO2 a bit high, like she wasn't breathing enough. He frowned again. We'll intubate if she worsens, he said. As if you can wait for someone to stop breathing to start breathing for them. At 9, she stopped moving entirely. At 9:10, her heart rate dropped into the 30s, then 20. Then the monitor showed a flat line. When a monitor flatlines, the first thing you do is look at the patient, not the screen. Because leads fall off. Because machines are stupid. Her chest didn't move. Her skin looked waxy. Her jaw was slightly open. Dr. Klein checked for a pulse again. He looked at his watch. He listened with the stethoscope for longer than he needed to. He stared at her chest like he expected it to argue with him. Then he said it. Time of death, 9:12. He didn't start CPR. There are rules about when you don't. If someone is clearly dead, if they have a DNR, if they're cold, stiff, and mottled, if it's been too long. She wasn't any of those. She was pale but not mottled. She was cool but not cold. Her joints weren't stiff. I waited for someone to say, "Start compressions." No one did. A young resident, Lars, looked uncertain. He opened his mouth. Dr. Klein cut him off. "She's gone," he said. "You can see it." "Should we?" Lars said. Klein snapped his glove off. "She's been unresponsive for hours. There's no reversible cause. We don't code everyone who's been declining all night in the ED." That was his rationale. Half policy, half ego. I didn't fight him. I wish I could tell you that I did, that I stood up and said, "This is wrong," and I forced them to try. But I didn't. I was a nurse, not a doctor. Not that that should matter. It shouldn't. But it did. We moved on. She was declared. The bed got cleaned. Another patient came in with a broken wrist. Her body went to the morgue. The morgue in our hospital is a bright room with stainless steel drawers and a heavy smell of cold air that hits your sinuses like metal. It's not spooky. It's mundane. The bodies are zipped in bags with white tags. It looks like storage. I wheeled her down with an orderly. It was my job that day. We moved her from the gurney to the metal tray. Her skin felt wrong through the sheet. Not cold enough. Like she was holding on to heat. I told myself, the cooling takes time. I signed the transport paperwork. I wrote Maren Lentz. I wrote the time. I wrote my name. I pushed the tray into drawer 3. The door clicked shut. The sound was clean. Final. I didn't think about her again until the afternoon. Her sister arrived. She was small, with sharp cheekbones and hair pulled back like she was trying not to take up space. She had a puffy coat and the kind of red eyes you get after hours of crying. She spoke quietly, but her voice had that hard edge of someone who has been bracing for bad news. Her name was Jewel. I sat with her in the family room. Dr. Klein did his scripted explanation. Unclear cause, sudden decline. We're sorry. Autopsy possible. Jewel listened, hands clasped so tight her knuckles were white. When he finished, she asked, "Did she say anything? Before?" Klein looked at his notes. She was unresponsive by the time I mean before that, Jewel said. Was she scared? Did she ask for me? Klein's face shifted into that blank professional mask. She did not express that, he said. That was technically true. Maren hadn't said, "Call my sister." She hadn't begged. She hadn't screamed. But she had looked at me earlier, and her eyes had moved like she was trying to find something. I remembered that. I didn't tell Jewel. I don't know why. Maybe because I thought it would hurt her more. Maybe because I didn't want to admit I'd noticed something and then done nothing. Jewel asked about personal belongings. We got her a bag with Marin's phone, wallet, keys. Jewel held the phone like it was fragile. She had episodes, she said, almost to herself. Klein looked up. What kind? Where she shuts down, Jewel said. She said it felt like she was underwater. She could hear people, but she couldn't answer. It happened once when she was a teenager. They thought she was dead. They almost... Her voice cracked. She swallowed. They almost buried her then, too. The room got very still. Klein made a dismissive sound, like he didn't want this story to exist. Catatonia, he said. I don't know, Jewel said. They called it something. Catalepsy. Something like that. My stomach tightened. It felt like the floor had changed slope under my feet. I watched Klein's face. He stayed calm, but his eyes flicked away. He was doing math in his head. When was the last time? He asked. Years, Jewel said. But she said she felt it coming sometimes. Like she'd get cold and her hands would go numb, and then she'd go away. Klein nodded. Thank you for telling us, he said, already standing. We'll note that. He left the room. I stayed. Jewel looked at me. Was she alone? She asked. No, I said. We were with her. That answer still makes me feel sick. We were in the room, yes. We were around her. But we weren't with her in any way that would have mattered if she was trapped inside her own body. After Jewel left, I went to the hallway and found Klein. Doctor, I said. He turned, annoyed again. What? She said, episodes, I said. Like she could hear but not respond. Like she wasn't dead. Klein's jaw tightened. She was pulseless, he said. Was she? I asked. He stared at me. Are you questioning the declaration? I felt my face heat up. I'm saying, if there's a chance. There isn't, he snapped. This is not a movie. Go do your job. He walked away. I stood there, my hands useless at my sides. That night I couldn't sleep. It wasn't guilt yet, not the full shape of it. It was something smaller and more physical, like an itch under the skin. I kept picturing her on the bed, eyelids half open, the way her chest barely moved. I told myself that if she'd been aware, she would have shown something. Tears, panic, a muscle twitch. But I'd seen patients locked in after strokes who couldn't move a finger. I'd seen people paralyzed by trauma who could only blink. I got up and checked my phone. Nothing. I had a strange urge to go to the hospital, as if I could still fix it by being in the right place. Instead, I lay back down and tried to think about anything else. I kept hearing the click of the morgue drawer. The next day, I went in early. I told myself it was because we were short-staffed. It was because I wanted to be in control of my own mind. I walked to the morgue on my break. The door is locked with a code. I punched it in. The room smelled the same. Cold air, metal, faint chemical. The drawers were lined up like cabinets. I stood in front of drawer 3. My hand hovered near the handle. I didn't have authority to open it without a reason, but I had opened drawers before, for identification, for transport. People did it. I opened it. The tray slid out with a smooth metal whisper. Her body was in the bag, zipped. The white tag hung from the zipper. I stared at the bag. If I unzipped it and she was alive, if she opened her eyes, what would I do? Call a code? Drag her upstairs? How would I explain it? My fingers shook. I touched the bag. It was cold. Not just cool. Cold. That relieved me in a way that made me hate myself. I didn't unzip it. I pushed the tray back in. The door clicked shut. I left. 2 days later, I saw her name on the schedule board. Not in admissions. In the mortuary pickup list. A funeral home was coming. I asked the charge nurse, "Is there an autopsy?" She shook her head. Family declined. They want her buried. Buried. The word hit me like a shove. I went back to the family room and looked at the paperwork in the file. Cause of death. Unknown. No autopsy. Released to funeral home. I imagined Earth. I imagined the tightness of a coffin. I tried to push the thought away. It didn't move. When the funeral home staff arrived, they wore black shirts and moved with practiced speed. They treated the body like a task, not a person. That's not cruelty. It's how they survive. I watched from the hallway as they wheeled the gurney out of the morgue. The bag was strapped down. For a second, as the gurney passed a doorway window, the fluorescent light hit the plastic covering the face area of the bag, and I could almost see the outline of her features through it. Almost. I had a sudden irrational fear that her eyes would open under that plastic and fix on me. They didn't. The gurney rolled on. I didn't follow. That should have been the end. It wasn't. The first thing I noticed was the dirt. Not literal dirt. Not clods on the floor. A smell. It started in the staff bathroom while I was washing my hands after helping with a wound dressing. I turned the tap off and suddenly I could smell wet soil, like a garden after rain, but mixed with something sour. I looked around, annoyed. The bathroom was clean. Tile, soap, air freshener. I sniffed my hands. They smelled like hospital soap. The soil smell was stronger when I breathed through my nose, and when I exhaled, I tasted something faint and gritty at the back of my throat. I coughed. Nothing came up. I told myself, plumbing, maybe a clogged drain. Then I went back to the ward and the smell followed me. It wasn't everywhere. It came in waves, like someone was opening and closing a door to a basement. When it hit, my stomach turned. It made me think of worms. That night I dreamed of my mouth filling with earth. I didn't dream of being buried. Not the full scene. It was smaller and worse. Standing in my kitchen, trying to talk, and feeling grainy soil between my teeth. Trying to spit it out and only making more. I woke up choking. I sat up in bed, coughing into my hand. There was nothing there. Still, I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror with my mouth open. My tongue looked normal, pink, wet. But when I brushed my teeth, the foam in the sink had tiny brown flecks in it. I stared at it. I thought stupidly, coffee. I hadn't had coffee. I rinsed the sink hard until it was spotless. When I went back to bed, I left the light on. Over the next week, I started hearing her. Not a clear voice, not a ghost story whisper. More like the feeling that someone is trying to speak from behind a thick wall. I'd be stocking supplies, and I'd suddenly get a rush of pressure in my ears, like when you go down in an elevator too fast. And with it, a faint vibration, almost like words. At first I thought it was tinnitus. Then one day, while I was charting at the desk, the vibration sharpened into something I could understand. Not a sentence, a sound. A thin, breathless exhale that carried panic in it. I froze with my fingers on the keyboard. The desk was busy. Phones ringing. People talking. Someone laughed at a joke. No one else reacted. I turned my head slowly, scanning the room. Nothing. The exhale came again, and this time it was followed by a wet scraping noise, like fingernails dragged across wood. My skin prickled. I stood up and walked to the supply closet, pretending I needed something. The closet was dark and cramped. Shelves, boxes, a mop bucket. The smell hit me hard in there. Wet earth. Rot. I gagged. The scraping noise came from behind me. I spun around. The door was closed. The scraping wasn't on the door. It was deeper, like it was coming from inside the walls. I pressed my ear to the plaster. Silence. I stepped back. My heart was hammering. My hands were sweating. I left the closet and went back to the desk. The noise didn't follow. For a while I thought I could keep it contained by not thinking about it. Then I started seeing things. It wasn't full apparitions. Not a woman in a white dress. Not a face in the window. It was smaller and more plausible, which made it worse. A smear of dirt on the edge of my cuff when I hadn't touched anything dirty. A fingernail with brown underneath it even after I'd scrubbed. The print of a hand on the inside of the glass door of the medication fridge, as if someone had pressed from the other side. The handprint was small. I wiped it away. It came back the next day. I started avoiding drawer 3 in the morgue even though it was empty now. Or it was supposed to be empty, because sometimes when I walked past the morgue door, I thought I heard a faint muffled sound from inside. Not a bang, not a scream. A sustained low moan, like someone trying to force air through a closed throat. I tried to tell myself it was the ventilation, but the moan had rhythm. It rose and fell in a way that reminded me of someone sobbing silently. I stopped taking breaks near the morgue. At home, the smell got stronger. It drifted out of my closet, out of my kitchen cabinets, out of my pillowcase. I washed my sheets twice in 1 week. The second time I pulled them out of the machine, they smelled clean and warm, until I pressed my face into them, and underneath the detergent there it was again. Damp soil. I started sleeping on the couch. One evening, while I was half asleep with the TV on low, I felt something cold touch my ankle. I jerked awake. Nothing was there. Then the cold moved. It slid up my calf like a hand, slow and deliberate. My muscles locked. I couldn't move for a second. It wasn't sleep paralysis. I was awake. My eyes were open. The TV flickered. The cold reached my knee. I grabbed at my leg with both hands. My fingers touched skin that was mine and skin that wasn't. The sensation is hard to describe because I can't tell you what it looked like. I didn't see a hand. I felt it. It was like pressing my palm against a wet plastic bag. It gave slightly and then held, cold and slick. I yanked my hands away. The cold vanished. I sat up shaking. On my ankle, just above the bone, there was a faint brown smear. I rubbed it. It didn't come off. It wasn't paint. It wasn't dirt on the surface. It was under the skin, like a bruise the color of soil. I went to the bathroom and scrubbed until the skin was raw. The smear stayed. That night I didn't sleep at all. I sat on the couch with all the lights on, watching my own body for signs of something wrong. A tremor, a numb hand, anything. Around 4, when the city outside was quiet enough that I could hear my own refrigerator hum, the pressure in my ears came back. It swelled until it hurt. I pressed my palms against my ears. The sound came through anyway. Not words, breathing, thin and shallow, like someone who can't expand their lungs. Then, under it, a series of muffled thuds, not 3, not spaced like a signal, chaotic, panicked, like someone throwing their body against a barrier that doesn't care. My stomach lurched. I stood up so fast I knocked over my glass of water. The water spilled on the floor. I stared at it. In the puddle, the reflection of my living room ceiling wavered. And for a second, in that wavering, I saw something else. A rectangle of wood above my face. Darkness pressing from all sides. A small oval of light near my mouth where the air was. I blinked and the reflection was just ceiling again. I sank to my knees on the wet floor. The smell hit me like a wall. Damp earth, sweat, and something else. Something sharp, like blood. The breathing sound changed. It became a strained wheeze, and with it came a feeling that wasn't mine. Desperate need. Not just fear. Need for air. My chest tightened as if a belt had been cinched around it. I tried to take a deep breath. I couldn't. The air stopped halfway. I clawed at my shirt. I stood and staggered to the window and shoved it open. Cold winter air rushed in. I leaned out and gulped. It didn't help. My lungs felt small. The need, the panic, wasn't mine, but it was inside me. I gripped the windowsill so hard my fingers went numb. Then, without warning, the pressure released. I sucked in a full breath. I coughed hard. Something sprayed onto the window glass. I looked. A smear of brown spittle. It slid slowly down the pane. I wiped my mouth. My saliva tasted like soil. I stood there shaking until my legs stopped trembling. When I finally shut the window and turned back into the room, the TV was still on. A late-night talk show host was laughing. The laugh sounded wrong, too loud, too alive. I turned the TV off. In the sudden quiet, I heard a new sound. Soft, close, like someone exhaling right behind my ear. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. A voice formed out of that breath, not loud but clear enough to understand. It said my name. Not shouted, not dramatic, just spoken, like she was tired. Jonas. My skin went cold. No one says my name like that. I forced myself to speak. Who? The breath came again, and with it came a sensation of pressure on my throat, as if fingers were resting there, not squeezing yet, just reminding me how easy it would be. The voice didn't answer my question. It said something else. You didn't look. I swallowed hard. My throat felt thick. I did. I lied. The voice was right behind my ear now. I could feel the cold on my skin. No, it said. You didn't. I closed my eyes. For a second I was back in the morgue, hand on the body bag, relieved by the cold. You were cold, I whispered. You were. The pressure on my throat increased slightly, enough that my voice broke. The voice came closer. It didn't sound angry. It sounded like someone who has run out of all polite ways to be heard. I got cold, it said. I opened my eyes. The living room looked normal. Couch, lamp, spilled water dried into a dark patch on the wood floor. But the air felt wrong, heavy, as if the room had less space. The voice continued, each word dragging as if it had to be forced up from deep underground. I was warm, it said. Then I got cold. I turned slowly. There was nothing behind me, just the hallway. But the smell was strongest there. It rolled out of the darkness like a draft. I can't, I said. I can't do this. I'm not. The voice cut through, sharper now. Listen. And then I did something I hadn't done since the day she died. I listened. Not with my ears. With the part of my body that had felt her absence and ignored it. The room around me faded slightly, like my focus narrowed. The smell filled my head. And images, memories that weren't mine, came in flashes. A ceiling, wood grain close enough to count the lines, a strip of satin beside her face, her tongue thick and slow, the taste of cotton, a numbness in her arms so complete she thought at first she'd been strapped down. A sound in the distance, voices muffled, not words, just the shape of speech, a sensation of movement, being carried. The jolt when the gurney wheels hit a crack in the floor. Her mind screaming while her body stayed still. The flash of fluorescent light through half-lidded eyes. And then a door closing. Click. Dark. Her breath turning shallow. The cold seeping in, her heart slowing. Not stopping. Slowing. A need to move, to signal, to do anything. Nothing. Time passing without markers. No day, no night. Just cold air and the smell of metal. Then movement again. Hands. Rough. Professional. A zipper sound. The bag shifting. A hard strap across her chest. A thought. Clear as if spoken aloud. They think I'm dead. And the panic that followed it. Not the movie panic of screaming. The real panic of a mind trapped in a body that won't obey. Her throat wanting to tighten. Her lungs wanting to expand. Her eyes wanting to open wider. Nothing. Then the sound of a vehicle. The low rumble. The sway. She was being taken. The flashes became sharper. A different smell. Polished wood. Flowers starting to rot. Perfume too sweet. Voices above her. A woman crying. A man saying, "She looks peaceful." Peaceful. Marin's mind recoiled at that word. She wanted to bite it. Then the worst part. Hands again. The shift from bag to something else. A hard surface under her back. The feeling of fabric against her skin, stiffer than a sheet. A collar pressed at her neck. Someone lifting her chin, arranging her like a doll. She felt it all. Felt fingers in her hair. Felt the brush against her lips. Felt the cold cream on her face. She tried to gag. Her mouth didn't move. She tried to swallow. Her throat barely worked. She thought, if I can just breathe harder, they'll see. She tried. Her chest moved a fraction. No one noticed. Then, hours later, or days, she couldn't tell, the lid, the sound of hinges, the closing, the finality, the darkness pressing even closer. And still, her mind was there. Her body had betrayed her. And then the earth. The memory of soil on wood, heavy and relentless. The way the sound changed once the first layer fell. How the world above became distant, smothered. Her ears popping. Her breath turning to desperate sips. Her tongue swelling, saliva thick, her throat burning. She tried to scream. All she could do was exhale. The air inside the coffin warmed quickly and became stale. She breathed it again and again. Her chest hurt. Her heart, that slow, stubborn thing, kept going. Then at some point her arms returned. Not fully, not normal, but a twitch, a finger bending. She felt it like a miracle. She tried to move more. Her nails scraped the satin. She tried again. Her hand hit the lid. Wood. Close. She pressed her palm to it. It didn't move. She pushed. Nothing. The air ran out faster once she started moving. She breathed harder. The coffin air turned wet. Her own breath condensed on the wood above her. She could smell herself. Sweat. Fear. And the sweet rot of flowers outside that she couldn't reach. She scratched. Not to signal. To make the wood give. Her nails tore. She didn't feel the pain at first. Then she did. It came late, like her nerves were waking up and realizing what had happened. Her fingertips burned. She kept scratching. Wood splinters lodged under her nails. She tried to cry. Tears ran into her hair. She opened her mouth and dirt from somewhere, maybe from a leak, maybe from her own mind, filled it. She gagged. She couldn't cough properly. Her throat spasmed. She swallowed dirt. She swallowed her own saliva. Her chest started to convulse. The need for air became a living thing. It pressed against her ribs. It made her vision pulse even in the dark. She thought of her sister. She thought of calling out. She thought of the word peaceful and wanted to tear her own tongue out for ever believing in peace. Then her body quit. Not all at once, piece by piece. Her fingers stopped moving. Her throat stopped trying. Her heart slowed. She felt it. Every beat like a door closing. And still her mind stayed. For a moment she was sure this was hell, not fire, not demons, just wood and soil and the knowledge that everyone had walked away. The images stopped. I was back in my living room, gasping as if I'd been the one trapped. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't make a fist. The air felt thin. The voice was right there, not in my ear now, but inside my head, like it had found a place to sit. "You feel it," it said. I couldn't answer. My throat was raw. I tasted dirt. "You didn't look," it repeated. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say I'd been one person in a system, that I wasn't the doctor, that I didn't decide. But the memory of my hand on the bag, relieved by cold, cut through every excuse. I was scared, I said, and I hated how weak it sounded. The voice didn't care about my fear. It cared about hers. It pressed on my throat again, and this time I felt the outline of fingers, not tight enough to choke, but enough to remind me what a throat is, a soft tube that can be closed. "You were tired," the voice said. The way it said it made my skin crawl, because it sounded like it had watched me. "You wanted to go home." I swallowed hard. "Stop," I said. The voice breathed out, and the breath smelled like damp soil. "Open it," it said. "What?" "Open it." I didn't have to ask what it meant. I knew. My stomach turned. "She's buried," I whispered. The voice was quiet for a second. When it spoke again, there was something worse than anger in it. There was hunger. "I'm still there," it said. I shook my head. "No, that's not..." The pressure on my throat tightened suddenly. My breath cut off. Panic flared. I grabbed at my neck, stumbling backward. The room tilted. My vision narrowed. In that narrowed tunnel, I saw again the rectangle of wood above a face, felt again the air turning stale, heard again that strained wheeze. My own lungs fought. I made a strangled sound. Then the pressure released. I fell to my knees. I sucked in air so hard it hurt. The voice didn't apologize. It didn't need to. "You'll open it," it said. It wasn't a request. I sat on the floor, hands on my chest, breathing like I'd run. "No," I said. "I can't. I don't even know where." The voice cut in, colder now. "You'll find me." I stared at the dark hallway. I could almost imagine a shape at the end of it. not a woman. A narrow space, a box, a place that should have stayed closed. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I flinched so hard my shoulder cramped. I grabbed it with shaking hands. A notification from the hospital system. A reminder for mandatory training. The banality of it made me want to scream. Behind the notification, I saw a missed call from an unknown number. There was a voicemail. My thumb hovered. The voice in my head was silent now, as if waiting. I pressed play. A man's voice, polite, professional. Hello, this is Herr Roth from Sonnenruhe Bestattungen. I'm calling regarding the release paperwork for Maren Lentz. There's a discrepancy with the signature on the transport form. Please call back as soon as possible. A discrepancy. My mouth went dry. I listened again. Discrepancy with the signature. I stared at the screen. The voice in my head whispered, so close it felt like my own thought. You signed. I squeezed my eyes shut. I remembered the form, the lines, the names. There had been 2 releases that day. 2 bodies, 2 tags. I'd been distracted. Someone had asked me a question while I wrote. Had I put her name on the wrong drawer? Had I mixed paperwork? The idea didn't make sense at first. Then it did. If the funeral home was calling about a signature discrepancy, it meant the paperwork trail wasn't clean. It meant someone was looking. And if someone was looking, then maybe. My stomach lurched. I didn't want the maybe. I wanted certainty. The voice in my head breathed, and I could taste soil again. You'll find me, it said. I sat there for a long time, phone in my hand, lights buzzing, heart thudding. Outside, a car passed on the street, tires hissing on wet pavement. Normal life. People going home, people sleeping. A woman in the ground. Or not. I called the number back. My voice sounded hoarse. This is Jonas Weber. You called about Maren Lentz. Herr Roth paused. Ah, yes. Thank you for calling back. There's an issue with the documentation. The transport form lists the drawer number as 3, but the morgue log we received shows drawer 5. We want to make sure we have the right individual. Could you verify? My grip tightened on the phone. Drawer number? Yes, he said. We picked up from drawer 5, as per the log, but the signature on the transport form is yours, and it indicates drawer 3. We don't want to bother the family, but we have to be precise. My mouth went numb. Drawer 5. Drawer 3. 2 bodies. 2 drawers. I swallowed. I'll check, I said. Herr Roth sounded relieved. Thank you. Please call back before noon. It's time sensitive. Time sensitive. I ended the call. The living room felt smaller. The voice in my head said nothing. It didn't need to. I knew what drawer 5 meant. I knew what a mixed-up release could mean. It could mean Maren's body wasn't where it was supposed to be. It could mean someone else had been taken in her place. Or it could mean something worse. That she had been taken. And the records were the only proof. And now the proof was broken. I got up. My legs felt weak. The brown bruise on my ankle throbbed like it had a pulse. I grabbed my coat and keys. As I turned off the living room lights, the hallway looked like the mouth of a tunnel. I walked out anyway. On the way to the hospital, the city looked ordinary. Wet streets, gray sky, people with umbrellas. I wanted to pull over and vomit. I kept driving. The hospital parking garage smelled like concrete and exhaust. I parked and sat in the car with my hands on the steering wheel. The pressure in my ears returned, low and steady, like a warning. I breathed slowly. My breath came out shaky. I told myself, I'm going to check a drawer. That's all. I'm going to correct paperwork. That's all. But my body didn't believe me. My body knew what the voice wanted. My body remembered the click of metal. I went inside. The hallway lights were harsh, making everything look too clean. I walked past the nurse's station and nodded at people who didn't notice my face. I punched the morgue code. The door opened. Cold air spilled out. Metal smell. I stepped inside and shut the door behind me. The room hummed with refrigeration. The drawers waited. I stared at drawer 3, then drawer 5. My hands shook. I opened drawer 5. The tray slid out. A body bag lay on it, zipped, tag attached. I leaned in. The tag read a different name, not Marin. My stomach dropped. I opened drawer 3. The tray slid out. The bag was there. I stared at the tag. Marin Lentz. For a second, relief washed over me so hard I almost laughed. Then I realized what it meant. The funeral home had taken the wrong body, or I had logged the wrong drawer. Either way, Marin was still here. Still in the morgue. Still in our care. Not buried. Not yet. The pressure in my ears spiked. The smell of damp soil filled the room. I stepped closer to the bag. My hand hovered over the zipper. The cold from the drawer seeped into my skin. My fingers touched the plastic. It was cold, but not as cold as it should have been. A thought ran through me, sharp and unwanted. What if she's still warm? I swallowed. My mouth tasted like dirt. I pulled the zipper down. The bag opened with a soft hiss of trapped air. I folded it back. Her face was there, pale, waxen, lips slightly parted, eyelids closed. Her hair was mussed, a few strands stuck to her forehead. For a second, she looked like she was sleeping. Then I saw her throat. There was a faint movement, not a swallow, not a twitch, a subtle, slow rise and fall. Breathing, so shallow it was almost nothing. My heart slammed against my ribs. I leaned in, terrified of my own senses. I held my fingers under her nose. A faint breath warmed my skin. My vision blurred. I backed away, stumbling. "Oh God," I whispered. The room tilted. The hum of the refrigerator became loud, oppressive. I fumbled for the door handle. Then I stopped, because in the silence between the hum, I heard a sound from the bag, a tiny wet inhale, a strained exhale, and under it, the smallest, weakest attempt at a voice. Not words, just a sound of effort. My hands flew back to the bag. "Marin," I said, voice shaking. "Marin, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered. Barely. A tear slid from the corner of one eye. It tracked down her temple and into her hair. My stomach twisted. She can hear, I thought, and the thought hit like a punch. She could hear all of it. The declaration, the zipper, the click, the talk about being precise, the casual talk. She could hear it and do nothing. I grabbed my phone and hit the emergency number. My fingers were clumsy. "Code," I said when someone answered. "Code in the morgue. Drawer. In the morgue. We have a live patient." There was a stunned pause. "What?" "Now," I barked. I dropped the phone and turned back to Marin. Her breath was still shallow. Her lips trembled. Her eyes moved under the lids like she was trying to open them. "Stay with me," I said, useless words. "Stay with me." The smell of earth intensified. It wasn't coming from the room. It was coming from her, or from something in her. Her mouth opened wider. A sound came out, a rasp, and then unmistakably a whisper. Not my name, not help, a single word. "Down." The lights flickered. The hum of the refrigeration deepened like it was slowing. My skin prickled. I stared at her. Her eyes opened, not fully, but enough. They were not the eyes of a woman waking up. They were wide with terror and something older. They fixed on me. And in that moment, I knew the voice that had been in my head was not a message. It was a passenger, and it had just found its way back to the place it came from. Marin's lips moved again. Her voice came out in a thread. "You left me." Footsteps pounded in the hallway outside. Voices. The door handle rattled. I couldn't look away from her eyes, because behind the terror in them, there was something else. A calm, flat certainty, like a lid closing, like earth falling. And I had the sick realization that saving her body might not be the same thing as saving her. Not anymore. Not after she had been cold in the dark. Not after her mind had stayed awake in a place meant for the dead. The morgue door burst open. People rushed in. I heard someone shout orders. I heard the snap of gloves. I heard the clatter of equipment. I stepped back as they moved around me. I should have felt relief. I didn't. Because as they lifted her, as they rushed her out into the bright hallway, her eyes stayed on mine. And in my head, in the place where the voice had been, there was a hollow space, a tunnel, an emptiness that felt like a grave. And from somewhere far away, through that hollow, I heard a faint sound, so faint it could have been my own blood in my ears. A thin, breathless laugh. And then, like soil settling, silence. No one high-fived. No one smiled and said we'd pulled off a miracle. When the code team poured into the morgue, it wasn't hope in their faces. It was fear. Clean, administrative fear. A living patient in a drawer wasn't a tragedy to them. It was a lawsuit with a pulse. They cut the body bag open like it was in the way, oxygen, lines. Someone shoved a tube into her throat, and the ventilator started doing the work her lungs wouldn't. The monitor lit up with numbers that looked almost normal, and that made my stomach drop, because the machine could make her look fine, even when she'd been packed away like spoiled inventory. Dr. Klein arrived late, pushing through the crowd, jaw clenched. "What is this?" he said. Lars, the resident, sounded shaky. "She has spontaneous respirations. She was not deceased." Klein's eyes snapped to me. "You opened the bag?" "Yes." "And why?" "Because I couldn't get the smell of dirt out of my mouth. Because a funeral home called. Because I didn't unzip her when I should have." "I was verifying identification," I said. His nostrils flared. Then his face smoothed out, like he'd pulled a mask over his anger. "What you saw stays in this room," he said to everyone. A couple of people laughed, short, disbelieving. Klein ignored them. He started shaping the story immediately. Rare, complicated, unusual physiology, words that made it sound like nobody had done anything wrong. Someone from administration showed up before Marin even left the emergency department. A man in a suit took my name and wrote it down the way you write down a patient's symptoms. They moved her to ICU. Then they told me to go home. Outside the hospital, life looked insultingly normal. Cars and wet traffic, people with headphones, a dog pulling its owner toward a tree. I sat in my car for a long time with my hands on the wheel and tried to breathe like my breathing belonged to me. At home, I scrubbed my hands until the skin split. The brown bruise on my ankle looked darker, like it was settling in. The voice didn't come back that night. That was worse. When it was there, I could pretend it was a hallucination, a stress response. When it was gone, I was left with the empty place it had made in my head. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered anyway. "Jonas Weber?" "Yes." "This is Jewel Lentz." My throat tightened. Don't," she cut in. Her voice was flat, scraped clean. "They told me she's alive. They won't let me see her." "She's in ICU," I said. What does alive mean? I thought of the drawer, the click, the cold air. It means she wasn't dead. Silence. Then, did she suffer? I should have lied. I didn't. Yes, I said. Her breath hitched, and I heard her swallow hard. She keeps trying to say something, Jewel said quietly. They asked if she'd mentioned anyone, and she moved her lips. It looked like your name. Jonas. My skin went cold. She wants to see you, Jewel said. I can't, I said too fast. You can, she said. I'm at ICU. They're letting me in for a few minutes. One person. Come now. She hung up. I drove back to the hospital. ICU was locked down behind a set of doors that felt like another border. Jewel was waiting outside, arms crossed tight. Her eyes were red but dry. She didn't greet me. She just slipped through when someone came out and dragged me in. Marin lay in a glass-walled room under bright light. Tubes everywhere. The ventilator breathed for her with a steady hiss. Her face was clean, hair brushed back, and she still looked wrong, like she had been rinsed and set aside. Her eyes were open, not wide, not frantic. Open. They moved slowly until they landed on me. Recognition. And something else that made my stomach turn. Not confusion. Not relief. Disgust. Jules reached for Marin's hand and squeezed. "I'm here," she whispered. Marin's fingers twitched. Her eyes didn't leave mine. Jules leaned close to her sister's ear. "Can you hear me? Blink once." Marin blinked. Slow. Deliberate. Jules' face crumpled. "If you want Jonas to leave, blink," Jules said. Marin didn't blink. Jules swallowed. "She wants you here," she said, like it hurt. The longer I stood there, the stronger the smell got under the ICU disinfectant. Damp soil. Marin's eyes slid to my throat. Then, barely, her lips moved around the tube. A word shaped itself without sound. Down. The pressure behind my eyes spiked. For a second, the room wasn't a room. It was a box. Wood inches above a face. Air warm and wet. I stumbled back, hand going to my own throat. And then the pressure released like a grip letting go. A doctor came in, glanced at me, adjusted a drip, and said, "She needs rest," as if rest was something you could order and receive. Jules got pushed out by visiting rules. I should have left with her. I didn't. Marin kept watching me until a nurse finally told me to go. In the hallway, Dr. Klein was waiting. He pulled me into an empty room and shut the door. "You are not to speak to anyone about this," he said. "She was alive," I said. His eyes were flat. "Yes, and now she isn't dead. That's all you need to know." "You declared her," I said. He leaned in slightly, voice low. "Do you know what happens to a hospital when someone tells the wrong version of this story?" "I'm not trying to." "You will be quiet," he said. "If you want to keep your job, you will stop making this about your feelings." Then he smiled, small and cold. "People make mistakes," he said. "They sign the wrong line. They open things they shouldn't. And sometimes those mistakes bury people." He left me there with my hands shaking. The next morning I was put on leave. Administrative, neutral sounding. A way to remove me from the building before I became a loose thread. At home, the bruise on my ankle spread upward in thin branching lines like soil veins. Dirt collected under my nails no matter how hard I scrubbed. Jules called once. "She's improving," she said. "That's good," I managed. "It's not good," she said. She looks at me like she doesn't know me. Then she looks at me like she hates me. And she keeps mouthing one word. I didn't ask. I already knew. "Down," Jules said. I didn't tell her what I'd seen behind my eyelids. I didn't tell her what it felt like to have someone else's lack of air inside my chest. "I don't know what it means," I lied. She hung up. That afternoon, Herr Roth from the funeral home called again. His voice sounded strained. "We still have a documentation issue. Your transport form says drawer 3. The morgue log says drawer 5. There is a family waiting for a viewing. We need confirmation." I drove to Sonnenruhbestattungen. because I couldn't sit still with the idea of more wrong bodies moving through the world like paperwork. The funeral home was warm and dim, carpeted, politely quiet. Herr Roth led me to a prep room where an older woman lay under a sheet. "Greta Nowak," he said. "This is the individual we collected." My stomach turned. "And Maren?" I asked. Herr Roth hesitated. "Your hospital says she is not deceased." He showed me the forms. My signature on Maren's transport sheet. Drawer 3. Then the morgue log showing drawer 5 with Greta's name. And a correction. I stared at the handwriting. It looked like Klein's. Herr Roth watched my face. "You recognize it," he said. My mouth went dry. Klein hadn't made a mistake. He'd tried to make one. My phone rang. ICU. A nurse's voice, clipped and shaking. "You need to come to St. Marianne immediately." "What happened?" "She's missing." My stomach dropped. "Maren Lentz," the nurse said. "Her bed is empty. Ventilator disconnected. Security is involved. Her sister is..." I didn't hear the rest. I ran. Back at the hospital, Jewel was in the hallway outside Maren's room like a trapped animal. When she saw me, she grabbed my shirt and slammed me against the wall. "Where is she?" she hissed. "I don't know," I said. A nurse shoved paperwork at me, face pale. It was a discharge, not to home, to the morgue, signed by Dr. Klein. Jewel made a sound like her chest was tearing. "He's killing her," she whispered. Security said the cameras caught a gurney leaving the ICU service elevator, pushed by someone in a mask. No one knew who. Everyone knows how easy it is to look like staff. "Where did they go?" I demanded. A guard said, "Down." The word hit like a fist. Down. We went to the basement. The morgue drawers hummed in their rows. Drawer 3 was empty. No bag, no tag, just cold metal. Jewel made a choked sound and covered her mouth. My phone buzzed. Herr Roth. "Jonas," he said, voice tight. "A private ambulance just arrived. They brought a body. They say it is Maren Lentz. They have documents. They're pushing to proceed." Proceed. Like you proceed with a shipment. "Don't," I said. "I'm trying," he whispered. "Come now." Jewel and I ran, back to Sonnenruhe. Herr Roth met us at the door, face drained. "They're in the prep room," he said. Inside, 2 men in dark work clothes stood over a sheeted body. One had a clipboard. One had hands that looked used to lifting. Herr Roth tried to be formal. "I have concerns about the documentation." The clipboard man smiled without warmth. "It's in order." Jewel pushed forward. "That's my sister," she hissed. The other man blocked her. I yanked the sheet back. Maren lay on the table. Pale, lips slightly blue, cotton tucked at the corners of her mouth like someone had already started tidying her for death. Her eyes were half open. They looked straight at me. The sheet rose with a breath. Small, barely, but real. "She's alive," I said. The clipboard man's smile twitched. "Residual movement," he said. Maren's throat moved. A wet rasp came out, tiny and desperate. That cracked him. His eyes flicked to the syringe in his hand like he hadn't meant anyone to notice it. He stepped toward her. "This will be easier," he said. I grabbed his wrist. The syringe clattered to the floor. The other man hit me in the ribs. Pain flashed white. Jules screamed and fought, biting and twisting. Herr Roth shouted for someone to call an ambulance. For a moment the room felt smaller, thicker, like the air was dampening sound. Marin's eyes slid past me to the corner of the room. Her pupils widened. The smell of soil surged, and something cold slid into my limbs. Not my anger, not my fear. A hard focus. I shoved the man with the heavy hands hard enough to send him into the wall. The clipboard man stared at me like he was seeing something behind my face. His lips parted. He whispered, "No." Then he backed away. Sirens sounded outside. He grabbed his partner's arm. "We're leaving," he snapped. They fled. Paramedics rushed in. They checked Marin's pulse and swore. "She's got a pulse," one said. "Disbelief." They loaded her onto a stretcher. Jewel tried to climb on. They pushed her back gently. "We've got her," they said. They took her. Again. And for a few hours I let myself believe we dragged her out of the system's mouth. Then the system bit down. They didn't put her back in ICU. They put her in a private room with guards. They told Jewel she couldn't see her. They told me nothing. Late that evening, a message came to my phone from an unknown number. An address. One word, down. Then another. "If you don't come, she goes alone." I called Jewel and told her, "They're taking her." "How do you know?" she whispered. "I just do," I said. I didn't tell her the flash I'd seen. A gurney, a private elevator, Marin's eyes staring at a ceiling like she'd already stopped expecting rescue. The address led out of the city. A cemetery. Newer plots. Fresh dirt. I parked near the gate and walked through wet grass that soaked my shoes. In the newer section, a few figures stood by an open hole. A worker with muddy boots. A plain wood coffin. And the clipboard man from the prep room. He watched me approach like he'd been waiting. "You came," he said. "Where is she?" He nodded toward the coffin. My lungs tightened. I stepped closer and put my palm on the lid. Cold wood. I leaned down and pressed my ear near it. At first, nothing. Then a thin, wet wheeze. Air scraping through a throat. My stomach flipped. "She's in there," I said. The worker shifted, pale. "We're not supposed to open it," he said. "Who told you that?" The clipboard man stared at the ground. "A doctor," he said. "Klein." He didn't deny it. "He said it would be kinder," the clipboard man whispered, and his voice broke on the word. "Kinder." I looked at the coffin lid. It was screwed down. Clean. Efficient. The worker had a cordless drill in the grass. I grabbed it. He grabbed my arm. "No." "If you stop me," I said, voice shaking, "you're burying her alive." His face went gray. I put the drill to the first screw. The motor whined. One screw. Another. Each one felt like prying loose a lie. When the last screw came free, I lifted the lid. It opened with a soft groan. Maren lay inside on satin, gray skin, cracked lips, eyes half open. Her chest rose barely, then her eyes shifted. They found mine, recognition, and that same calm, flat certainty. Her lips moved. I leaned in. She mouthed the word again. Down. No, I whispered. Up. We're getting you up. I reached in and tried to pull her shoulders. She lifted an inch, then stopped. Not weight. Resistance. Like suction. Like the air itself had decided she belonged in the box. Her throat worked. A whisper came out, dry and small. You opened it. Yes, I said, shaking. I did. I'm here. A tear slid into her hair. I heard you, she whispered. My throat tightened. I'm sorry. She stared at me. Something hard settled behind her eyes. I waited, she said. The worker called for an ambulance with shaking hands. Maren's gaze flicked to the open grave, then back. Her lips trembled. Now you, she whispered. Cold tightened around my ankles. My feet sank into the wet grass like it had turned to thick mud. Panic surged. I tried to step back. My legs didn't obey. My breath stopped halfway. I clawed at my throat. The world narrowed down to the open hole in Maren's calm eyes. Hands grabbed my arms, the worker, then someone else running in. They yanked. My shoes came free with a sucking sound like something reluctant. I stumbled backward and hit the ground hard. Sirens approached. People rushed to the coffin. A paramedic leaned in, swore, started compressions. Air. Mask. Orders. Competent hands doing what competent hands should have done days ago. I watched Maren's face as they worked. Her eyes stayed open. Not pleading, not scared, just open. And then, very quietly, her chest stopped trying. The paramedic checked once, twice. Then he looked away. Time, he said. They closed the lid. They screwed it down. They lowered the coffin. Shovels moved. Soil hit wood with a dull sound that didn't echo. No drama. Just weight finding its place. As the first layer fell, my mouth filled with dirt. I gagged. Brown flecks hit the wet grass. No one noticed. When the grave was filled, they tamped it down and placed a temporary marker. Maren Lentz. A date. It looked official. It looked finished. When everyone finally left, I stood alone by the fresh mound in fine cold rain. For a moment the pressure behind my eyes eased. Quiet. Then, deep in my bones, I felt a low, sustained exhale. Not a knock, not a signal. Just breath against a wall. I turned. No one. Only rows of stones and wet grass. But the smell of soil thickened until it filled my mouth. I stumbled to my car, hands shaking, and fumbled my keys. In a puddle by the tire, my reflection wavered. For a second it wasn't my face. Maren's eyes stared up from the water, half open, calm. Then it was me again. I drove home. My apartment smelled like damp earth as soon as I opened the door, like it had been waiting inside. I went to the bathroom, turned on the light, and stared at myself in the mirror. When I opened my mouth, there were tiny brown grains lodged in the grooves of my tongue. I rinsed until my mouth hurt, the sink filled with brown flecks. The drain gurgled. For a second, in the dark throat of the pipe, I saw an eye, half open, watching. The bathroom light flickered. The mirror fogged, though the room wasn't warm. On the fog, a line appeared, drawn as if by a finger. A straight mark. Down. Her voice didn't come from behind my ear. It came from everywhere. Quiet. Tired. Certain. "You opened it," she said. My throat tightened. "I tried," I whispered. "I waited," she said. Cold fingers settled around my throat, not squeezing yet, just claiming the soft place. "You were tired," her voice said. "You wanted to go home." I shook my head. "Please." A soft laugh echoed off tile, empty, almost bored. "Down," she said. The floor under my feet seemed to soften. The grout lines darkened, wet, as if something underneath was pushing up. I backed toward the door. The room stretched, hallway turning into a tunnel. I tried to run. My feet stuck for a heartbeat, then released. I grabbed my phone and tried to call for help. No connection. A message blinked onto the screen. No one heard me either. My breath hitched. The walls felt closer. The air thickened. My hands were dirty now, caked with wet earth I hadn't touched. A splinter cut my palm. Wood. Close. The ceiling lowered. The living room blurred into something else. A tight, wet darkness. A box. Air used up and returned to me stale. I tried to scream and only breath came out. My fingers hit wood inches above my face. I pushed. Nothing. I scratched. Splinters drove under my nails. My lungs burned. My mouth filled with grit. In the tight dark, her voice breathed against my ear like she was right there. "This is what it was," she said. I shook, sobbing without sound. "You left me," she said. I tried to mouth apologies. The box didn't care. Her voice didn't change. "Now you," she said. And the last thing I heard, before everything went heavy and quiet like a drawer closing, was my own thin breath running out.